Today we are talking about the human design profile known as the 6-1, 6 being the conscious aspect, 1 being the unconscious, the 6 being the role model, 1 being the investigator. Now this profile combines a visionary perspective of the line 6 with the foundational depth of the line 1. And these people are often here to build quite a solid foundation, like understanding life through their own lived experience of it. So it's not just something that they only read about in a book or that they study or they test, but it's also something that they actually get to practice and bat around, I guess you could say, with life. And, being a line 6 or having a line 6, this often means there's a 3-stage phase that they will often go through in life, and we'll talk about that soon. And that's also just to help provide them with examples of what's worked, what hasn't, kind of mistakes can be minimized or even potentially avoided, how to do that, how to get the best, outcome, or what's the best process to go about how to do something, because they've actually lived through that themselves. And so, the line 6, they seek truth, and it's not just from reading about it. It's not just from talking about it. Others will often look to them for perspective, leadership, and example. And this tends to come more later in life when they've gone through more of the 3 stages. As we've spoken about before, 1, they need the foundation. They do need some study. They do need some testing. They do need to do some research. And that's their foundation, which they then build their skills from. They're able to lead better that way, able to guide better that way. And so, unlike some of the profiles, there's a lot of focus on kind of like the immediate impact that the profile has on a person, a group, a collective. The 6-1 is a lot more about, it develops over time. It's quite a gradual process, and their influence tends to deepen with age and with their experience in itself. So the first phase, we've talked about this in some of our videos before, how some of these profiles have these 3 phases. First one is usually, from birth until about the age of 30. And we would call that very much the experimental phase and stage of life. It's a lot of trial and error. You're trialing things, you're finding out what the errors are, whatever that may be, whatever your perception of that may be. It's a really experimental phase. And, and there's a lot of learning that can be done and is done through direct experience in and of itself. And then you're moving more into the second phase, that sort of age around about 30 to 50, and we would call that more of an observation phase. You're taking a bit more of a step back of the trial and error, a step back of the experimentation, feeling a little bit battered down from a lot of those earlier experiences. You're taking more of instead of being on the ground, running around in the backyard, trialing all things, I'm going to sit on the roof now and I'm going to observe. I'm going to try and process some of these things and integrate some of these things that I've learned and experienced. And there may still be some experimentation, but it's a lot less intense and it's a lot less risky. And you're looking at life more through a detached perspective. Probably another way. You're going from doing to understanding. Then around about the age of 50 is when you move into the 3rd stage. And that's when the embodied wisdom starts to come online. And that's when the role model of you really starts to come out. It's not necessarily through status or authority, but through the quality of their presence and their lived wisdom. At this stage, usually people actually start asking you for perspective and wisdom They might not do so much when you're 21, and maybe you've retreated too much when you're 35. But when you're getting into those older years, that's when people might start recognizing, like, I think that person might have something to share that I need to know. So yes, how does a 6-1 use a profile? Well, one, building a strong foundation with that line 1. Another is allowing time for growth. So you might want to be in that 3rd stage with the wisdom, but it's not there yet. So you have to be patient with that, learning from experience rather than timing it and resisting it, and just allowing it, surrendering into it, Value reflection. Obviously, that's very important in that 2nd stage phase. Actually understanding what was going on, how did it happen, why did it happen this way, and embodying rather than performing. There's no need to perform that you know something when you're in that later stage. When you're in that 3rd stage, you don't need to prove anything. Someone comes to you, they ask for the wisdom, and you give it. The wisdom in and of itself speaks its own value. And also, again, follow your personal authority. So whatever that may be, and then combining that with your type, learning how to use it, and your profile, and the use of your profile will become a lot better. Now, often common challenges for the 6-1, we're looking at things like seeking absolute certainty when it's just not time for it to happen. Feeling different or separate, that can happen, especially with these kind of 3 stages. You kind of feel like you had 3 different people living inside yourself. Being impatient with the developmental process, careful there, to have some patience. Disappointment with imperfection, that may come during that sort of 1st and 2nd phase. That's okay. And over-identification with knowledge is another one as well. Now, if you know someone that has a 6-1 profile, how can you support them? So we're looking at things like respecting their need for understanding, appreciating their perspective, allowing them to evolve, especially if you've known this person for many, many years. You may have the privilege of knowing them through each of these 3 stages. And if you keep them stuck in a box of how they were this stage, and therefore they should be here, it's not very helpful. It's not helpful to you, not helpful to them, and it's not going to allow their gifts to flourish. Encourage reflection as well with them. They're thinking about something, or there's something's happened, and ask questions, get curious, see if you can help them unpack some of that, and value their experience. So yeah, when they say they've done this, that, and the other when they were 22, they probably did do this, that, and the other when they're 22 and learned the hard way. And if it's now 40 years down the track after that, I'm sure they've learned some interesting things from those experiences. So yeah, the highest expression of 6-1, we're looking at, them becoming the living example of grounded wisdom. They combine a deep understanding with a lived perspective, lived experience. They offer guidance that's practical and authentic, and that comes with that line 1 contribution. It's not just about knowing nor merely vision, but it's the integration of the two, to help others see what's possible while remaining rooted in what's also real. So, how can you progress to another state and place, generally, metaphorically, if you can't recognize what is and also what could be, and how do you one to the other, Now, I'd say the core lesson of the 6-1 is they're not here to become the role model overnight. They need to become patient with that. Their path unfolds through investigation, time, experience, reflection, embodiment. Their greatest influence does not come from trying to lead, but from becoming someone whose life reflects the wisdom that they have earned. As they trust their process, they allow themselves to mature naturally. You know, they'll become a powerful example of, you know, integrity, depth, and authenticity for human development. Now we only have one more profile to talk about before we've covered them all, and stay tuned for that. If you've got any more questions about the 6-1, about human design in general, leave that in the comment section down below. You can also book in a session with me. I do human design sessions, one-on-one, online, and you can find links to a website in there, email address, all of that sort of stuff down below, and I'll see you again soon.